So it's been a year since Crash 4 came out. Well, a little longer than a year, but around about a year since the game released, and I thought it would be nice to commemorate the occasion by revisiting and looking back on the game and just talking about it. Talking about the things I like about it, the things I love about it, the things I'm maybe not so keen on, just every aspect of it. And I guess also seeing if any of my opinions have changed since the initial months after the release. I've seen and done absolutely everything this game has to offer, from completing the first level to beating all the developer time trials, and I loved every second, so I'm genuinely excited to start talking about it again. For those who are really curious about what I think and how my views have changed, I made a review about a month or so after the game released, so I recommend watching that first, and then coming back to this video afterwards. And then after this one is done, watch every other video on the channel, then you'll really have a good idea of what I think. Also, leave a comment with your own thoughts on Crash 4 now that a year has passed. I'm interested to see what you think and how your opinions have changed over time. Anyway, let's crack on. So I guess I'll start by saying that the very existence of this game is a big deal for me, as it was for many a hardcore Crash fan. You know, I went through my whole history with the Crash series in a different video, but to put it simply, I've been a fan of the series since I first found out what a video game was, and I followed it even through its darkest days, all the way through the hiatus where there was no hope. And sure, there were the remakes and I absolutely loved them, but to see a proper brand new game, after 12 long years of nothing, a proper new game that was made so faithfully to the original games yet still being fresh and innovative in so many ways. It was really significant, it really cemented the comeback, it was confirmation that Crash was officially back from the dead. Like, that just makes me happy. And this game just makes me happy generally. I was over the moon about it ever since its announcement. I rewatched all the trailers so many times, soaking up every single detail, and I could not wait to get my hands on it. And it was such a joy to play. I was captivated from start to finish. So what is it that I like so much about this game? Well, it just did so many things right. During the lead up to the game's release, in the back of my mind, I was worried that there was going to be some kind of colossal fuck up that would send the franchise back into its grave. So I was relieved to see that the game nailed it on so many fronts. It was important for the game to capture the vibe of Crash. The Crash series, its characters, its world, even its music are full of personality, and Crash 4 did a really great job of showing off that personality and really letting it shine. The characters have lively and expressive animations, the environments are bright and colourful, and the music feels authentically Crash. Also, because this game has a more involved story than previous entries, you get to see the personalities of these iconic characters fleshed out a bit more, especially the likes of Cortex, Entropy, and even Nitrous Oxide. It's just delightful to see these characters come to life to an extent that's not been done before in the series, and even little nods and references and Easter eggs to characters like Crunch, Nina, the Evil Twins, seeing them scattered across the game in appreciation of the post-Naughty Dog era was just great. I think the story was brilliant too. It was very simple and straightforward and light-hearted, not overly complicated and not taking itself too seriously. It was perfect. It followed on from Warped perfectly, it felt very natural for the Crash series. I do like that it was more involved than previous games as well. There were more cutscenes, you had more of an idea of what the villains were actually doing, and there were even some surprising and unexpected twists, like Entropy teaming up with his counterpart from the new Torna's dimension, which I think the fanbase has taken to calling her Femtropy. That was a total surprise to me, and you know, for the brief time she was relevant for the story, she was phenomenal. She demonstrated more character in the 20 minutes she was on screen than Koala Kong has in 25 years. But yeah, I thought the story was great. It really felt like something out of a Saturday morning cartoon, which is the vibe that is a perfect match for the Crash series in my opinion. But to be honest, what was more important to me than anything else about this game was the gameplay. The gameplay is what defines Crash, that's why it was so successful back in the day and why it's so successful now. And I was worried that they were going to do something stupid. I was worried they were going to think, well, obviously the most defining feature of Crash gameplay is jumping on the back of a mutant and beating shit up, so we're going to do that. I'm so glad they didn't do that. They stuck to the roots of the series, the corridor-like linear platforming is what I think we all wanted, and Crash 4 delivered. It's faithful to the original games, but what I absolutely love and what I wanted them to do is that they didn't just copy the original gameplay, they took it, built on it, and put their own spin on it. They expanded it to make it infinitely more fresh and interesting. The most obvious expansion is the quantum masks, and I absolutely love the way they were used. They're not something like vehicles where it completely changes the gameplay. The quantum masks allow the gameplay to stay traditional, they just add an extra layer to it. Their powers and the way they're used are also so creative and innovative. The ways Lunny Lolly's phase shift is used are pretty impressive, Akano's dark matter spin is very satisfying and its floaty jumps are used very cleverly, the way Kapunawa's time slow interacts with nitro crates and countdown crates is great, and Ika Ika's gravity flip makes for some mind-boggling puzzles. And the way all the masks are combined and utilised together in the final levels, as difficult as it was, I had nothing but the highest admiration. It was incredible level design. But that's only the beginning of the innovations they threw into this game. In addition to the traditional Crash and Coco gameplay, this game also features 3 extra playable characters in Torna, Dingodile, and Cortex. Each of them adds a unique twist on the gameplay while remaining faithful to what Crash games are supposed to be all about. And I especially love how in the timeline levels, the actions of the additional playable characters affect and cross over into main levels. That's a really cool concept. Vehicles do make a comeback too, but they aren't frequent and don't make up a huge chunk of the game like they do in Warped and Wrath of Cortex. The Atmosphere was cool to see and hit the road, and the Jetboard was fun to use in Jetboard Jetty and Run It By You. Polar and the Schnurgle were previously my least favourite part of the game because of how slippery and unreliable they were, and I complained about that a lot in my review last year, but since then the game has been updated, and their controls have been improved, so that's nowhere near as big of a deal anymore. The vehicle sections are cool, but they don't overstay their welcome, and I'm also glad that no level in the game is purely a vehicle level. They're incorporated into regular levels, which is a great way of handling it. Even when you get down to the crates, there's some really cool ideas going on there. I've already mentioned the countdown crates, and honestly I'm surprised it took the series 25 years to come up with that idea. It's so simple yet so genius at the same time. And the way the game uses those crates to create interesting puzzles and platforming challenges is really wicked. The crate that spews fire, which should have been called the Incinerate, and I'm furious that it wasn't, are also pretty neat. They have fewer applications than the countdown crates, but are still a worthy idea. And then you have things like the inverted mode and flashback tapes, which are just so inspired. They were so brilliant the whole way through. It's weird because the novelty of a mirror mode in games like this usually wears off almost immediately, because it feels pretty much the same, just flipped. But here with the inverted mode, the different themes and effects change the vibe and the atmosphere of the level so dramatically that it all feels brand new. I especially like the radar effect in the first world and the paint spinning effect in the third world. Some of them even slightly change the gameplay. For example, in Mosquito Marsh, the overcranked old-timey camera effect speeds up the gameplay, and the underwater effect in the snacks dimension slows down the gameplay. In those situations, the game really does feel different and new. And the flashback tapes were everything I wanted them to be when they were first announced. They were tricky, they were challenging, they really made you think, and unexpectedly made me start hoping for a Crash Bandicoot Mario Maker. They were also surprisingly charming. Obviously using music from the original games gave me a flashback to back in the day, but the dialogue from Cortex and Embryo and Engine was so entertaining, and even little tidbits of lore snuck in. Things like Dingodile being created because Cortex couldn't decide whether he wanted a mutant dingo or a mutant crocodile. Each one was just an absolute joy. The time trials also made a comeback, and they were done really well in this game. In some games that have time trials, and Wrath of Cortex sticks out in my mind as an example of this, the levels weren't really designed for racing through. It can sometimes feel like levels were designed first, and then they had to try and turn that into a time trial, almost like the time trials were an afterthought. But here in Crash 4, even though it might seem like it right away, the levels were really well designed for time trials. I found that speeding through each level in a time trial was smooth, especially when combined with the slide spin and triple spin. It was very satisfying to do, so you could tell that the levels were built with time trials in mind. And beating all the developer times in this game was probably the most difficult thing I've ever had to do in a game. At times it felt impossible, but I'm so glad I stuck with it because I felt so accomplished by the end. Don't think I'll be doing it again anytime soon though. Now as a Crash fan, going for 100%, 105%, 106% completion is crucial, mandatory even. So of course I was thrilled with the idea of going through all the levels, collecting all the gems, replaying them in inverted mode to get all the inverted gems, finding the colored gems, beating the time trials, getting the insanely perfect relics, getting platinum in the flashback tapes. I even went to the trouble of getting all the achievements. I did all that and I had so much fun doing it. Now the thing is, this game gets accused of padding. Because there are a lot of collectibles, a lot of gems, a lot of requirements to getting 106% completion, plenty of people have complained and accused the developers of inflating the amount of collectibles in the game to elicit more playtime from them. I don't really agree with that. I think the only collectible that adds pretty much nothing is the insanely perfect relics. Since they don't require anything different from you, it just requires you to do what you've already done, but all at once. The rest of them, the gems, the time relics, flashback tapes, etc., are perfectly valid. And sure, it might take a long time to earn them all, but isn't that a good thing? It just means you get to spend more time playing Crash. I mean, you look at the original trilogy, you could probably 100% complete all 3 games in a day. With Crash 4, it takes a lot longer, so you get to enjoy the game for longer. And also, because of the skins you earn, the game is actively and constantly rewarding you for going the extra mile to earn everything. I don't understand how you can be mad at that. Others have complained about how there isn't a special reward for achieving 106% completion, and I understand that. After going through all that, it does feel like you deserve something more than a secret ending. But I think in the grand scheme of things, it's better that there isn't a special reward, because that way the people who won't or can't reach 106% completion don't miss out on any of the game's content. No content in the game is locked away like that, which I think is okay. Anyway, I think that covers everything, so I guess in summary my thoughts are mostly the same from a year ago. In fact, they've become more positive. I adore the presentation of the game, the art style, the music, the story. Everything about it is perfect and I wouldn't change it in any way. They did an excellent job there. It's easily the best looking and sounding Crash game in my opinion. The gameplay was phenomenal. From start to finish it was incredible. In terms of level design and difficulty, which are a huge part of what makes the Crash series so great, were top notch. I just enjoy this game so much and I'm really happy with how it turned out. It definitely is within my top 3 Crash games of all time and it's a strong contender for my favourite. But I'm not ready to make that claim yet. But yeah, it's a near perfect game. Should have been Game of the Year. I'm so happy with it. I suppose let me know what you think of Crash 4 in the comments. Tell me your thoughts in great detail because I really enjoy reading other people's opinions and seeing other people's perspectives. And yeah, thanks for watching and here's hoping for an even better Crash game in the years to come.